Hello everybody, it's your friendly digital technology librarian, Christy here. We've reached another Friday, so of course I have another Film Rec Friday ready for everybody out there. Now, did you know that in addition to the plethora of live-action films and television series we offer via our digital Kanopy and Hoopla services, we also offer a ton of really amazing animated features and series as well. So when I say animated, I'm not just talking about cartoons for kids, which I think a lot of us immediately leap to when we think about animation. No, we do offer an amazing selection of child and family-oriented films and TV series that happen to be animated. But we also offer a plethora of really amazing, critically acclaimed animated features and series for teens and adults. I'm talking about really popular and really trending anime series. I'm talking about art house films that have won serious awards. And there's really a little bit of everything, despite these titles being animated. And I kind of thought that since we're ringing in April anyway, let's ring in an animated April. And today's episode really features animated titles that are for many different age groups. We're going to have one that's for, all ages. I've got a couple that are a little bit older oriented, but they're all really fantastic titles, and I strongly recommend you check them out. So without any further ado, let's get to the recs. Okay, all three of today's recommendations are available via our Kanopy service, and the first of those is 2014's anime series, Parasyte, the Maxim. Now, one thing that's great about Kanopy is that you get 15 tickets every single month to use however you should wish. And for series, this series in particular, it's 24 episodes. It takes 5 of your tickets, but you get 2 entire weeks to watch all 24 episodes, which is a pretty great deal. Anyway, if you happen to have a subscription to Netflix, or if you follow along in any of the trade magazines online, you might be aware of a South Korean live action TV series that was just released on Netflix a few days ago called Parasyte. Now, that live action is based on the same manga that this anime is based on, and a manga is just a Japanese comic book. And this particular manga series is by Hitoshi Iwaaki. It is a fantastic science fiction horror blend, and I absolutely fell in love with the manga the first time I read it years and years ago. This anime was the initial adaptation of that manga, and anime is a great transition point for a manga, because you're still dealing with a drawing, essentially just a drawing set to motion. It's that leap into live action where things really start to get complicated. Now, if you are interested in either watching something before you dive into that Netflix series, or maybe you've already binge watched the Netflix series, I strongly recommend Parasyte the Maxim, because it is a fantastic adaptation of the base material. It is a very different story from the live action that they just put out. It's different characters. It follows a different storyline. It's just got this base theme. And the theme in Parasyte Maxim is that we're following a young man who ends up getting possessed by this strange and mysterious parasite that just invades the earth overnight. And it seems like no one else really is aware of what's going on. These parasites are kind of like sleeper agents, right? And so he has to essentially save his entire world. And of course, there's tons of action. There's definitely some gore. This is, as I'd mentioned, not one of the animated features for littles. This is definitely a teen and adult series, but it is so action-packed, and the pacing is just fantastic. It's really an adventure story, and you've got those science fiction vibes, you've got the horror vibes in there, and the animation is really solid. This is from 2014, so you're definitely looking at a slightly different style than a lot of what you're seeing today, but it doesn't feel dated at all. And again, you've got this really engrossing story that just pulls you in from the very beginning. Now, one, as I've mentioned, of the great things about the new interest in this particular storyline is that even though, Netflix is doing its live action thing, which I do think is a very challenging leap. It's very hard to go from like comic book to anime to live action, because a lot of what happens in this story is stuff that only your imagination you would think could dream up. Like, is CGI really up to it? And side note, CGI is definitely up to it in a lot of ways. But I do think animation makes things much easier to transition between those two realms, between like the drawn page and then motion. So yeah, if you're looking for something exciting, if you're looking for something that is definitely an interesting, intriguing story that will pull you in and keep your attention, make sure you check out Parasyte the Maxim. Again, it is 24 episodes long. It takes up 5 of your 15 monthly tickets, and you have 2 entire weeks to watch it. Definitely strongly recommended. Huge, huge, huge plus for any science fiction or horror fans out there. Okay, my next recommendation is one of those art house critically acclaimed feature films that I was mentioning. This one is 2016's In This Corner of the World. Again, this one is definitely geared towards an older audience. It is an animated wartime drama that's set in the 1930s and 1940s in Hiroshima and Kure in Japan. That's roughly 10 years before and after the atomic bombing. And it just sort of details how life is at the beginning and how it shifts and changes through all of that sort of tumultuous time period. And I do think that this is the kind of story that really helps us grasp like the real nitty-gritty human nature of what is clearly a horrible situation. In this, we're following a young girl. At the beginning of the story, she's 18. She ends up in an arranged marriage, which is not a bad situation. That's not the drama within this film. Trust me. And she has to learn how to navigate this incredibly tumultuous period in time. It's so interesting to see this sort of peaceful life that she's living, where the day-to-day troubles are so different from both the middle and the end point of this storyline. And it does not shy away from, things that happened and things that these people were facing, fallout from radiation, like people who didn't instantly die within the bombing, what happens afterward. So it's a really humanizing sort of situation. We can look into history books and study about this as much as we want, but there's something really accessible about this format, I think, that makes it a tangible situation that we can digest. Because I when reading about what happened, it's hard to really understand, like the terror that people would feel, and then we've put them in and the animation somehow makes it something that is absorbable, in a way that I think even live action adaptations of this particular period of time are hard to absorb. I think a lot of us put up this sort of emotional wall where the animation just somehow manages to slip through. I don't know what that is that makes it that way, but I've talked to other friends who feel very similarly. And what's great about this is that it's very matter of fact in a lot of ways. It's not trying to teach you a lesson. It's just painting a picture of what was, what happened in this situation. And while this particular film is not based on a true event in particular, it is considered a fictional account. The official guidebook of the movie does talk about how episodes and pieces of the background of this storyline are based on individual facts and actual incidents that happened, that were pulled from interviews and were pulled from written records and things like that, so as to bring reality in without necessarily having it be based on a true story in like a biopic sort of way. Now, In This Corner of the World won several awards and was nominated for even more. And one of the big awards that it won was, of course, the 40th Japan Academy Film Prize for Best Animated Film. It won the Annie Award the year that it came out, and tons of like individual film festival awards. And it's one that holds, I want to say, a 97% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is pretty high. I mean, critic response is always going to be a little bit different necessarily from audience response, but 97% is still pretty solid. And the other thing that I absolutely love about this is that it is hand-drawn animation. It's not CGI. It's not, there's something very, I don't know what, there's something about hand-drawn animation that I think has a very specific feel, and it reads differently on the screen. And this particular story, I think, would not work as well with a CGI animation. I think that hand-drawn, touched feeling goes a long way to adding to this story. So if you are looking for something that is a really fascinating, beautiful depiction of a really tumultuous time period, if you were looking for something that might give insight into things that were happening to people and things that occurred in the before and the after period of the bombing, this is something that I think will really resonate with you. So again, definitely check this out. It's on Kanopy, like all of today's recommendations. 2016's In This Corner of the World. It is definitely a must watch. Okay, my final recommendation for this week is a biggie. This is my favorite pick of the week, and it is 2017's The Big Bad Fox and Other Tales. I do think it's a little bit funny that my absolute favorite pick of this week is the one that is certainly the most family friendly. But what's great about this story is that while it absolutely works on a level that kids will appreciate, it 100% works on a level that I think most adults will also love. Somewhat like a Toy Story, where some jokes are just going to go right over a kid's head, but none of that detracts from the storyline. In this one, it's just really charming, sort of fable style stories. Anyway, Big Bad Fox and Other Tales tells 3 separate storylines about this farm and farmland inhabitants and the little things that they get up to, the little antics that they end up dealing with. You've got a story about a fox who mothers a family of chicks. You've got a rabbit and a pig and a duck who end up playing stork to another baby animal. And then we've got a duck who wants to be Santa Claus. That's a really simplified summary of these stories, but it's pretty accurate. Big Bad Fox comes from one of the directors behind the award-winning Ernest and Celestine, which is also a fantastic film. If you have not seen it, it's beautifully animated, great story. But there's just something really funny and charming about Big Bad Fox. It's a combination of sort of like whimsical animation, because it's definitely not that bright candy coated world that you were kind of used to, I think, here. It's a lot more subdued as far as color scheme goes. But then you've got this sort of ridiculous slapsticky style humor going on too. And that juxtaposition just really works in some strange way. It's really very entertaining. And the stories are legitimately funny, like really laugh out loud funny. My favorite of the 3 was about the fox. So this fox has this rather dastardly plan to raise 3 chicks to chickenhood. And he intends to eat them once they're adults. Does not go to plan. He ends up loving these chicks and has to go through a ludicrous amount of trouble to keep them safe. And it's just really one of those soft, fuzzy moments where you're like, this is really funny, but also adorable and really sweet. And it just worked on every level. And I loved all 3 stories. All 3 stories had sort of what with maybe a different animation style or without that sort of slapstick sense of humor might have been a bit too saccharine, but because of those other elements, it just feels very heartfelt and it feels really charming instead. And like I said, all three of the stories were full of that feeling. You just feel warm and fuzzy after watching. So, of course, like I said, works well for kids, but works just as well for adults. I loved this. This was my favorite of all three animated recs for this week. And I'm a huge science fiction horror fan. So, Parasyte, I went into assuming was going to be my favorite. Anyway, if you are looking for something that you can watch with your whole family, that is sweet, that is funny, that has great animation and just a really great vibe to it, make sure you check out The Big Bad Fox and Other Tales. Also check out Ernest and Celestine if you get the chance. Really great stories, really funny, and just thoroughly entertaining. Okay, so that is it for this week's recommendations of animated features. If you have any recommended titles that happen to be animated that you would like to share with us, please pop those in the comments. If you have any recommendations for themes you'd like to see us cover in the future, definitely share those. Always looking for help with that. As always, thank you so much for watching and sharing your time with me. I love putting these together. It's always a really fun opportunity to dive into the catalog. But yeah, so again, thank you for joining me, and hopefully I will see you next week. Bye.